Truth Talks. Please, I'm excited about the Truth Talks. They are addressing true fellowship and what it means, what true fellowship and corporate worship looks like according to the Bible.
Anybody read ahead? I mean, we probably getting ready to roll on the Chronicles like really deep. In fact, we may even put a little pause in the Book of Kings and move over to Chronicles, because what we getting ready to see in the Book of Kings, as we mentioned last time, we know some of the kingdoms, the throne is getting ready to start being tossed back and forth, divided, interdivided. Brothers getting ready to come across brother. God is gonna be like, "What is you doing?" They're gonna say, "We don't listen." He's gonna say, "You finally haven't heard me." Deals are gonna be struck, like, and then eventually the Book of Kings is just gonna shift to the prophets. It's gonna be more of the kings are gonna be doing things and the prophets are gonna be there, but a lot of other interesting actions happen in the Book of Chronicles doing the same thing. Anybody notice that when they was reading the Book of Kings and reading ahead, I don't know how far ahead you made, that it kind of just really started to focus just on Jerusalem? Anybody notice that? It talked about the king of Jerusalem doing this, the king of Jerusalem doing this. And then every once in a while you'll hear, and Judea was over here doing this. It's like really quiet, right? Or they'll say, oh, and they were doing this, and Judea came over and they lend a hand. And you're like, wow, what's going on here? Because this is Israel is the what? What kind of kingdom is Israel? Say again? It's divided, but what else is Israel? In the eyes of God, what is Israel? It's a word they like to use in the scripture, especially in the Old Testament, when something becomes dirty. I even give you the hint. The people would have said this is actually start with the same letter. The Israel is now, there you go. Israel is now defiled. It is now whored out to other gods, because this is what the scriptures say. They have went whoring to other gods. They have taken up adulterous practices. They have started to worship other gods. They have started to set up high place, and each king that's in place to make Israel a better place is instead making Israel more wicked. So what king are we on with Israel? Mm-hmm. Say again? Asa. That's the king of Israel, Judah. So who are we with Israel? Bashing. So it's funny that we read Asa, right? And if you go into Kings, doesn't it tell you a little bit before bashing, right? It tell you some things that happened. I mean, in Chronicles, I remember we reading back and forth here. In Chronicles, will tell you a little bit of things that he was doing. Going up, setting up walls, plotting against his brother, took down a tribe, became the king. It was a lot of stuff going on in Israel. So now we're starting to see the Israelites, the people of the 10 tribes, are actually starting to enter war with each other. Taking over here, I was like, one of them, he only reigned, how many days? It was a very short stint. All right, let's get into all that. It was one of them, I think it was like 7 days, right? Yeah, 7 days. When he realized that the thing was being stormed, he ran in and went down with the flames. All right, so let's get into these kings. We may bounce back and forth, put a pause in one place in the Book of Kings to go over the Chronicles, just so we can have a good flow of the story. So if you do go back and you're digging deep into your studies, you can see how the two kingdoms intertwine, but they're in two different books, told from kind of two different perspectives as well. Remember, pre-Babylon versus post-Babylon. So I had to break out 3 Bibles today. It doesn't look like it, but 3 of them are up here. So we started at Kings 15. And I believe we were a little bit further down in there. I think 15:15 or 15:13. So 15:9. All right. In the 20th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Asa becomes the king of Judah. Remember, this is speaking to the divide. And he reigned 41 years in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is what? What is Jerusalem to Judah? Or Judea? Whatever way. But Jerusalem is the capital. These are capital cities. What we're also going to see is we're going to see some land change hands in the midst of it. And it's going to kind of strike a deal that's going to get a little dirtier later on down the line. In fact, the guy's going to say, I took from you, or your dad took from my dad. So what I'm going to give back to you is I'm going to give this back to you. We're going to strike a deal so the other armies don't come and beat us up. It's going to be a lot of things going on. And it's very subtle in one book, but very explored more in another. All right, so I got both of these, the kings, and that don't benefit me. One of these need to be Chronicles. Now, you know, when I was reading today, and as I may be a little further, but I'm going to talk about things going further anyway, is because as I was reading today, I realized something about Ahab, wicked king. He didn't just have Elijah, who he didn't like, who always prophesied ill against him. It seemed like every prophet that came from Judea he didn't like him so much that he struck some of them. So Elijah wasn't one of the only ones, but he's going to take a forefront in Kings. So, but before then, let's see the buildup and the workup of how everything is going between these two armies. So I'm trying to get to it in Chronicles here. All right, so in Kings, I'll read some things over here. So you follow me and wherever you are, and if we switch, you don't have to worry about it because a lot of it is similar. If it's something off in one or the other books, don't worry about it because it's pretty much telling the same story, but from one side of the kingdom versus the other side. All right. Jeroboam, Solomon, Israel became, and Asa became king over Judah. And he reigned 41 years in Jerusalem. His grandmother was Maacah, granddaughter Absalom, so forth and so on. We know that Asa did what? He acted righteous in the land. He made everybody put away all of the idols. He made all of the tore down all the Asherim poles. Any high place that was dedicated to any other one, he got rid of it. Cult prostituting the lands, he got rid of it. So right now, Asa is what we would consider one of the good kings. And as I was reading, I said, wow. In the history of things, we're told that he's one of the good kings. So it's going to give you a really small snippet here of his life because it's going to switch to Basham or Baasha, king of Israel. And how did he get there? How did he get in that place? Because that would make you ask this question right here, right? It doesn't say it. All right, so let's go on. All right, Ash is sent. Oh, I went too far. Yeah, I scrolled down because we talked about that last week, and I'm trying to get right back to where we were after he cut down. So I want to say 14, 15. All right, so remember some of the things were, because I want to make sure I don't want to miss anything. Took down it was his mother. He removed her from being the queen, remember? Because he had made abominable things for her Asherim. And Asher cut down the abominable images and burned the city in the valley of Kidron. All right, but the high places were not removed. However, Asher's heart was perfect. So remember, he tore down some things, but we see that some of the temples were not removed. So did he do all good? Yes, because here we see who's saying his heart is perfect. Right, because that is the only qualifying thing what makes a king good or bad. When we hear that they were perfect with the Lord in all his days. And he brought all the stuff in the house of his father, his own the holy items, silver and gold utensils. And now remember, it says that the fight between them two, Asha and Bahasha, the sovereign of Israel, they fought all the days. Now, make sure I get this right because we're going to transfer into Chronicles. All right, so in Chronicles 16, right? I want to make sure I'm at the beginning of it. Chronicles 2:16. Now, remember, we talked about the war. We just mentioned that those two were warring all their days. Now, in the 30th year, the reign of Asa. So what side of the kingdom are we speaking on? The 30th year of the reign of Asa. It sounds like we're speaking about Judea, right? But look at how the text is getting ready to switch because it's letting you know during this reign, this was happening with the other kingdom. Baasha, the king of Israel, came up against Judah and built Ramah to prevent anyone from going out or coming into Asha, the king of Judah. So we see he took it a little step further. When they talk about the kings, each king becoming more and more wicked, before Jeroboam and them did what? To stop the people from going to Jerusalem. He built calves, right? But he never said, don't go up there and do what you need to do for your worship. But we actually see this man building places to stop people from going up to Judah. So his wickedness is increased, right? Not only are you not telling people to worship in your land, you're actually stopping people from going and participating in the worship in their land. What you got?
More just trying to do from also leaving.
That's it.
And doing that. And it affected the trade. They couldn't even trade. So,
and that's why this line, and that's what it says. And Asher brought silver and gold from the treasury house of the Lord, because now he's having some pressure over there in Jerusalem. That's the capital. Remember, there's other people right there outside of their door. So he has to start using money that was in the storehouse. You get what I'm saying? Why I'm saying, when it's saying he's bringing the gold and the silver in the Chronicles, he's bringing it out for use, because remember, they were putting it in there. This was in the days of abundance. What is his reason for going in and bringing it out? We see the conflict between the two kingdoms. All right, and he brought the gold and the treasury in the king's house and sent them to Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, who dwelt in Damascus. Now we see why he's taking the money out, right? One part of the kingdom is closed. We're having issues. What do I do? Who do I turn to for help? Who do I get this other king that's my brother off my back? You see how when you talk about it like a relationship, it starts to sound kind of weird instead of going to your own brother, as we know later on in scriptures, and making things right there, right? These are the lessons that we see taught in the Old Testament, that we see that their failure to do these taught lessons. If something is wrong or you're wroth with your brother, do what? Put it down and then go make right before making it. But we see that instead of this, they go outside to make offerings to other people, other gods. Now, when he took this opportunity to go over to, how do you think God took that? So we're going to start to see a whole lot of patterns between the good, or the kings that were deemed good in their days by the Lord. You'll see that even some of them, in a midst of fear or anxiety that may have been stirred up by the nation, that they also started to seek other nations. So when we hear in the scriptures too, again, not to take away from the spiritual side of things, but think about what's happening right now in the physical aspect of Judah and Jerusalem. People are going to other nations and other gods for help. Judah is in complete disarray. Well, Judah's in disarray, and we also see that Israel is far gone. All right, so I'm into an Asher brought silver from the house of the treasure of the Lord and of the king's house, and he sent it to Ben-Hadad, there it is, king of Aram, who dwelt in Damascus, saying, let there be a covenant. Let's you and I make a deal between you and me, and there was between my father and your father. See, I have sent you silver and gold. Come break your covenant with the king of Israel. Y'all know the name. So that he withdraws from me. You see what he's doing? He's trying to pay his way out. Things are getting bad. Now remember, how big in comparison is Jerusalem versus all the other 10 tribes? Is Jerusalem the biggest out of the group? Smallest in size. So you can see that this tribe is we're starting to see the franticness of the human side of what they're doing in here. We see that this king is now in a panic instead of relying on what God has said. It was perfect in all his days, right? That's who he should have sought out. But instead, he went to another king to tell him to break the covenant. And Ben-Hadad listened to the king, Asher, and he sent the commanders of the armies against the cities of Israel. And they struck Ion, Dan, Alba, Mayim, and all the stored cities of Naphtali. So I keep taking these pauses because I don't want us to forget what we learned in the Chronicles. What we learned in the Chronicles was the lineage, the history, the relationships between these tribes. We talked about early the beauty of what tribe brought to what as the 12 were unified as the kingdom. But now we see that one tribe has struck their own brother. I think this, if I'm not mistaken, outside of the wars, this is one we see as a striking of a name, Naphtali. That's one of the brothers. They went in there, and they probably been whooping them up the whole time, but we're starting to see that it's starting to go past little areas like Bethesda and starting now to be affecting whole tribes. We're getting ready to see a lot of division in the whole tribes. All right. And it came to Bashan when he heard that they had stopped building Ramah. Remember, he was trying to build up the wall, and he came and he ceased the work. The Asher, the king, brought all of Judah, and they took away the stones and timber of Ramah, which the king of Israel had used for building, and with them they built up Geba and Misfit. So they built up their strong forts, their places, their area. Not only did they attack their brother to stop them, and again, rightfully so, because he was building up and stopping the people from worship. So this doesn't make him wicked or anything, but what we're starting to see is the internal fighting is really increasing. It talks about a it's going to give you more of the same in Kings, but as we go through the Chronicles, you might see it from one side, because we're going to bounce back to Kings in here in a second. Go ahead.
You said Asher, he did not remove the high places, right?
Right.
It does say it here in 15:13. It says in verse 14, but the high places were not taken away. Nevertheless, the heart of Asher was holy. You see the verse 14, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, in chapter, 1 Kings chapter 15, verse 14. 14. Okay, I'm just trying to reconcile here. But if we go to 2 Chronicles 14:5, it says he also removed the high place. So is that something that Chronicles, we know it's historical, look back and see that he did?
You said 14:5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Said he removed.
He said he also removed the high places and that altar from all the cities of Judah and the
And then in 1 Kings 15, it says he did remove.
Now,
I'm just trying to reconcile.
I'm gonna help you out with that. Remember when we first started this, I said, hey, the Chronicles paint pictures of people completely different. In fact, we use David as the best example. A lot of the stuff the chroniclers, when they wrote it, they said, we don't want to talk about that because historically it's already over here. We don't have to say it again. If you want to know about what David did to Bathsheba, go over there and read it. In fact, some of the stuff in Chronicles is like a footnote. It'd be like, and David was great and life was good, except what he did for Bathsheba. And then everything about, you see what I'm saying? So in other words, post-Babylon, when they're writing the history of it, this remember, a lot of this is oral tradition. Oral tradition. We have the oral tradition of what the kings recorded, Samuel. And now we have the oral tradition of what the chroniclers are recording. Not going to say that they are admitting it makes it change, but they're admitting it is just like this. They just didn't say it.
So in that time, he could have went and removed them later.
So what I'm saying is this. As we look at what God said his heart was, we could try and say, well, this thing right here, we know that he did remove them, right? Because one scripture saying he did. And we also know that he removed certain ones from the land. So when we're talking about, go ahead.
No, in 14:5, okay. Also, he took away out of all the cities of Judah, the high places and the images, and the kingdom was quiet before him. Now we go to 15:17.
And you're where?
This is in Chronicles.
2 Chronicles. All right, we were getting there.
But the high places were not taken away out of Israel.
Different places.
The whole land.
Yeah, you're talking about.
But when we go back and see that there are high places in Judah as well. When we say high places, right? What's your thoughts? Because remember, in Chronicles, it's telling the story from that side of the table. But also they're telling the southern side or northern side, southern side. They're telling the southern side. So a lot of the southern side writing, if you look how they're depicting the kings, they're telling what's really going on in Israel, and you get very little of what. Hold on, let me reverse that. You hear you're going to hear a lot of what's going on in Judah, and you won't hear too much of what's going on in Israel until you switch to one or the other. So think of them talking as collective, because God is looking at the land as a whole. Right? So if all of the high places is not Israel, then you see what I'm saying? We ceded the high places, but it was still high places in Judah.
And just as we look at Kings as being written as the events are happening, let me use that, but when you go to Chronicles, I don't know if y'all remember me quote Josephus and Philo, they're historians.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you get to Chronicles, it's like you said, it's post.
It's
so
post.
They're like writing historic events past, but then when you read the Chronicles, it's writing as things are happening.
The Chronicles are past, but Kings is as it's happening, vice versa. So in Kings, all of them weren't down. In Chronicles, when they were talking about it, they might have just talked about. You see what I'm saying? By this time, things have moved on. It's. I always stress this when it comes to it. It's oral history. All right, you go back and you look at these stories right here. This is the history of Israel. You'll go and find different things throughout history. And the reason why I'm mentioning history is here is because these are the events, how they remembered after. We're talking about a conquered nation here that's writing about something post. And remember, how long were they in Babylon? 7 years is a long time to forget things, especially when people over there, and we see that Daniel was fighting a good fight by praying and doing what he was supposed to do. The four Hebrew boys did what they were supposed to do. So it may inflict that there were a lot of, and I do believe in Daniel, it speaks to that. There were a lot of people that did not go in the way of the Lord when they went into Babylon, right? So now we have a small group of people trying to remember everything that took place 70-something years ago. They would have only been told about stories in Babylon. It would have been traded. It might have been written down so some people could have it. You kind of get what I'm saying? They're not lying about it. It's just a later story. Like right now, and again, I'm not saying anybody's saying we're lying. It's just to clear up that question. You know, it's not a lie. Go ahead.
I'm looking at the wording of it, and we're talking about Judah, and we're talking about Israel. Okay, as two different countries. Okay, and in 14 it says that they took all the high places out of Judah. Okay, in 15, it didn't take all the high places out of the northern territories. It took all the high places out of the southern territories. Is the way I read.
Okay. And I mean, again, we're seeing the story being told. That's the Chronicles, right? Chronicles was written after. So when we see that, we see a writing of a conversation after verse before. We're also going to see it from one side. This is why in the beginning of all this, I said, Kings and Chronicles is like this. Two people were telling a story. One was right there, let's say on day one, and in a mist and a haze, they kind of told everything. Some of the names got left out. Hey, I didn't know what the name of the prophet was, but it was a prophet. It was a lion. Hey, who knows? That lion could have got a name, and hey, that's the lion of this, and they might have called him that, but we don't know. We know that story was given to us right there during the Kings. It was preserved. Now you fast forward to the Chronicles. Okay, so again, this is not to confuse the text, and I get what you're saying. Hey, this is how they told it then, and that's how we take it. But when we look at the two texts overall, you can't get right then and there, because what did it say about Asher in Kings? You kind of see what I'm saying? All right, so as we progress, we was in 15 of Chronicles, right? Where was he? All right, so he took away the stone and bricks, and he went and built it himself. And at that time, Hanani, the seer, came to Asa and said, King of Judah, and said to him, because you have relied on the king of Aram and have not relied on your God, therefore the army of the king of Aram has escaped from your hands. Wait a minute. They wasn't going up against Aram, was they? Was they going up against Aram? Was that an army that they was warring with? Because who was he talking to? The king of Judah, right? So when he's telling them this king you made a deal with, you let him out of your hands. We reading that right? Right. You made a deal. So which was to say what? That at one point they were going to be given over to them. Am I reading that wrong? Okay. Because we're going to see that phrase quite a few times, and it's even going to get to a point where a prophet is going to go outside and say, sock me in the face because God said so. And the dude going to be like, nah, then he's going to die. Then he's going to go to another guy and be like, sock me in the face because God said so. And the guy going to be like, all right, and black his eye. Story, I'm not making it up. That's the story in the Bible. I'm just paraphrasing. All right, so as we progress, right, we see that now he tells them that prophecy escaped. Were the Cushites in Luban not a mighty army at in the very chariots? In other words, you've seen what we could do in the past, but yet you relied on your gold and silver to pay the people instead of relying on me. He's given them past victories with very many chariots, horsemen, and because you relied on the Lord, he gave them into your hand. For the eyes of the Lord diligently search throughout all the earth to show himself to be strong on behalf of those whose heart is perfect. Remember, we talked about the perfect heart. But right here, now we see that God was saying, if you would have kept your heart perfect, that heart that you had was perfect, I would have gave this army to you. Right? Because the Lord is looking at the person with the perfect heart so he can come and get victory for you. Right? Remember, everything we see here in the Old Testament, it tells you in the New Testament that these were for our lessons, our teachings. So when we look at what's being said right here in this, if your heart is perfect, man, so many scriptures that talk against our heart. How do we make our hearts perfect in the eyes of the Lord? Well, here in the Old Testament, his heart was perfect in the eyes of the Lord because he sought the Lord all of his days, right? In his heart. That's where his heart was, which means he sought the Lord. But we see right here where he didn't seek the Lord, and the Lord gave him past examples of, I brought you out of this. Why didn't you continue on that steady path? Again, we are believers. We are put on a path. This is an example to stay on that steady path no matter what the battle may look like. Remember, this was a fight against his brother, a fellow. When I say brother, I'm talking about a kingdom here, which he had fear, and in fear made him go do something that his past has showed him that he already had victory. It made him believe in something that didn't happen against something that had already happened, and he had victory in it. You know, sometimes proof positive doesn't always come from, well, let me say it this way. Proof positive can come from a retroactive interaction, meaning something you've done twice in the past. And yeah, they might say, well, it's a strong chance that you might go and it may not happen that way. But if you had victory in the past, and we're talking about the Lord here, we know that the chance of it happening again is what? I like arrogance, 100% guaranteed. But if you know that the Lord has given you victory twice, and fear has told you that the third time is not going to happen, you see how your heart changed? The heart, the thought process of it. God can get me out of this. He'll take care of me. He has fought my battles. He has kept me strong. But instead, his heart, his thought process changed to say, I no longer have the strength of the Lord. I have to rely on my gold and silver. All right, so he relied on the gold and silver. Now, this is where we hear in the Chronicles some things, and in Kings some things, in the Chronicles some things. So we're going to hear a little bit more about Asa, right? For his eyes is diligently searching, I'm on 9, throughout all the earth to show himself to be strong on behalf of those whose heart is perfect. You have acted foolish in this, so from now on you shall have battles. Sounds very familiar, right? Remember, he had peace. It was once a king who had peace all around him. When he let the disturbances of things got in him, he now has battles around him. We see the same thing happen to Asa. We see another king going down. And the funny thing is, this king is in the same path of who? What line? The one who could give us a previous example of this. Easy money. Solomon, right? He did almost everything Solomon did down to the T. Instead of him building the temples and stuff. So we see the good that he was doing. He was actually going, when we hear that the king got more wicked and wicked, right? We hear those phrases. We hear those terms when we read our Kings and Chronicles. This king waxed and waned more wicked. That king waxed and waned great and was righteous in the eyes of the Lord. Well, what is the wicked? What is the righteous that was done, right? It's things that we see. So one of the things we see that was the things that were built up in the land that made the land defiled, he went and did it. So now we see he did improve better than his fathers, or he kept in line with the things that his fathers did. See what I'm saying? But he still has some flaws. Again, this is not a flaw to say he wasn't perfect. We're just pointing out some of the things that he did for our learning. So after that, it seemed like that everybody who gets this news from any type of the seers, the first thing they want to do is get mad at the seer. I'm just doing my job. I just came to tell you what it said. And Asa was wroth with the seer. Wow. And he put him in prison, for he was enraged at him because of this. And Asa oppressed some of the people at that time. Now, again, when we put the Kings and Chronicles together, you kind of get a little bit more of a in-depth story. They kind of mirror each other, but we get a little bit of the things like he put the people in, like he was making them work. He threw a prophet in prison. I don't think they mentioned him throwing a prophet in prison in Kings, did they? Correct me if I'm wrong. So we see some of the works of Asa, but yet God in Kings, his heart was still perfect. Here, they just are telling us the tale of him. Because remember, in the destruction of Israel, and when I say Israel, I'm saying as a whole, that means after Assyria and after Babylon. The annals that we hear in the book of Kings, isn't this written in the annals of the kings? Well, when I go to look for the annals of the kings, I don't have them because, again, I've said this before, conquesting kingdoms erased kings from the books of history. We hear God say it a lot. I will smite your name from the face of the earth. Well, a lot of these kings, that was what they did. They would go and wipe a king out. That's why now in Jerusalem and over in those areas, they're finding stuff they're digging up, and it's like, wow, this really did happen in the Bible. Wow, but it's not based off of things they're finding from Scripture. It's things they're finding in history that the Bible said would be right there. Okay, what I'm saying? So as we see things throughout this, the chroniclers were giving our best understanding of what they all knew from that history, from what had been passed down generations to generations and generations. And I know, again, let me take a little side note here. You'll get people who say, well, oral history isn't reliable. Why do you believe in oral history? It's just men writing the Bible. And I can understand that. And even sometimes I'll hear what they're saying, but a lot of what we see here, we know it's the inspiration of God. It's either the history of the men of God being recorded. So it's not being written any different than any other part of history. We just got America, and a lot of times most of the time our stuff make it into the history books. Well, that's because it's the history of America. If we were to go over to Israel, they might not have libraries, or they may do. I've never been there, so I can't speak too much about it, but they may or may not have what we have. Let's just say that. But I do know that if you go over there, they study pretty hard. And a lot of the stuff is oral history. It is talked about in groups. In fact, a group like this would just be sitting there and they would be talking about it for hours. You know, the men, and it's a beautiful thing that we can get women in here to get every voice heard. But a lot of them, they'll sit for hours and talk about the scriptures. One line, like you go look it up. Just put on there and say the studies in Jerusalem. This guy's just sitting all day, and yeah, they're keeping their history. It's not just one person. It's the entire group repeating the story so much that if I came to you and told you the story of Christ, and I came to you and told you the story of Christ, and we were all here, even if my story doesn't sound like you would tell it, the things that are important I wouldn't miss. You know, that's like somebody coming to tell you about Christ skipping over the crucifixion and just saying he was resurrected. Hey, man, Christ was born. He was a cool cat, did a lot of things, and then he was resurrected. Sounds weird, right? You got some questions. How did he die? We know that. So when we tell the story, we don't leave out anything. So that's what I'm talking about, this oral tradition. All right. So he threw him in jail, and I'm on 11. And look, the acts of Asher's first and last, aren't they written in the books of the kings of Judah? So we go back. That's the kings. That's the book they're referencing in retrograde. But the other book reference a whole different ledger of kings. So we see that. I want to point out the little things like this when we're studying and you're seeing the scriptures. A lot of times, it's not so much that I'm trying to expose you to new things in the scriptures, just to see the things that our brains may read, and it'll jump over just for familiarity of reading. Like, has anybody asked about when this line right here tells you about the kings, and you say, all right, it must be the book of Kings. But has anybody asked themselves about the annals or the chronicles and say, are those the same chronicles? Because a lot of times we're coming to find out in studies, they're not. You'll learn, you'll see what they have, and it'll open up history to you. All right. So he's wroth, he threw him in prison, and he was raised him because of this, and Asa oppressed some of the people. And you look at the Acts, the first and last, and see they are written in the books of the kings of Judah, Israel. And in the 39th year of his reign, Asa became diseased in his feet. And his disease was severe. That's what it said. When I looked it up, just that. He was diseased in the foot. Anybody got anything else? This was the one thing in the Bible when I read it. I mean, you read a lot of things. This man had a life. He did good. And he just got diseased in the foot. Now, I did, which led me all around the internet. And if you buy it with me for a minute here, a lot of people who die from disease in the foot or get sick from disease in the foot, gangrene. All right, and if it's not gangrene, it could have been diabetes. It could have been anything, because a lot of that stuff attacks the lower extremities. So who knows? The scripture just said he got bad feet. He had diseased feet. All right, maybe he couldn't dance. His dance moves was hindered. All right, and he slept with his father and he died. That's a little bit more of an expansion than what we got in Kings. Not by much, because if we go into Kings, it's going to kind of talk about that same thing. Anybody read all of Kings? That part? Where do I need to get out of Kings? Can we run through it? Because I don't want to read it all again. 15 is where we were. We talked about them, because now 15:24. All right. So you see how we gave the story a little bit more detail. I didn't take anything. I didn't make it up. I just put the two stories together. And if you read them both together, you'll see the little tidbits, and then you'll have everything that's said. All right. So Asher slept with his father. I'm still in Chronicles, right? 40 years after, and he died in the 40 years of his reign. And they buried him in a burial site which he made for himself in the city of David. And they laid him in a bed which was filled with spices and various kinds of ointment mixed by perfumer's skill, and they made a very great burning for him, meaning they celebrated his death. Now, on the other side, the last time a king's death in Israel was celebrated, and Israel made a great celebration of it, was who? Or they mourned, the whole Israel mourned, was who? On the other side. We're talking about recent kings here. The son, right? So now, in 24, right? Let me see. Back in Kings for a second here. All right. And Nadab, right? Because we already talked about that. So Jehoshaphat is now going to reign. Now, the funny thing in here is we're going to get Jehoshaphat name dropped here, and I think we won't get back to him until later on. Anybody read ahead? We'll hear little bits apart about, but we're going to hear a majority about who in this text. Nadab. And what side of the kingdom is that on? Jeroboam, right? Now remember, he's in there in the second year of the king of Judah, which was Asher, and he reigned over in 12 years. And he did evil. They broke right out. They didn't even say nothing. They just let's get you familiar with him straight out the gate. And he did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and walked in the ways of his father, and by which he made Israel sin. Then Bashan, son of Ahijah, the house of Issachar, conspired against him. Wait a minute. So Naphtali, huh? Now we see. Now this is when we hear conspire, he's conspiring against the whole house. These are the 10 tribes that said, we don't want to be of anything with David. Remember that? So when they walked out, they are now kind of, even though at first Israel was a whole as 10, but because they walked out, we see what's starting to happen. The internal 10 is even fighting. Judea and Benjamin, remember, Benjamin already got smoke checked like 50 verses ago or chapters ago. Remember them guys? There's not a lot of war going on. In fact, if you had to think about everything that Benjamin been through up to this point, Benjamin is probably the one like, hey, y'all sure y'all want to fight? Because I remember one time we was down to 600 or somewhere around there. And then after that, I remember we had a king and everybody almost died again. And then after that, like, Benjamin is looking at Judah like, can we keep this as calm as possible? That's just my thoughts on it. So as we see, this king act wicked, right? So if we stay here, I think, make sure. All right. So we mentioned Jehoshaphat, right? Remember what I said. Jehoshaphat, they threw it in there and then they kind of come back to it. So here's where all these Bibles are going to start to intersect. I'm going to read probably between the two of 2 Kings and right where we are in 15. You'll see me transition in the conversation. So don't worry so much about your paper. If you pick one versus the other, hopefully they'll both mirror together and we can see how we have, I mean, we're rounding home plate here We're going to finish up Chronicles, and then we're going to roll into the Second Kings, and that's kind of a different evolution of a story. But the good thing is right here, we're getting ready to come to the end as we move through Chronicles. All right, so remember back up here where I said in Nahab, right now I'm in Kings, 1 Kings 15, just at this verse right here. So Asa slept with his fathers and was buried in his father's city of David, and Jehoshaphat's son reigned in his place. Stop right there. Let's see what Jehoshaphat did. Now, it's going to talk about it a little bit in here, but we're doing a little time traveling back and forth. We're putting this oral history together. We're basically blending the timelines so you see the story. You're seeing what the people of Babylon said against the people who wrote the history, Samuel, the keepers of the records, Gad, Nathan. We're seeing what they said. We're putting the words so you see everything as a whole. As we've been walking through this, haven't we like before, and I like this, consider this like a gauge question. You don't have to answer it, but in my belief, I'm seeing everybody grow, so that's the beauty of it. Before, when we started with Kings, how many people was this fluid between the two chapters? The two books, I mean. Right. The fluidity, once the fluidity comes, the story becomes easier, and the line and how you follow it becomes easier. Now, I did put all this together in one thing that I ain't giving to nobody until the end of the class. Because if I gave it to y'all, then y'all would be just as smart as I am. No, I'm just kidding. The reason why I don't want to give everything right now in this moment, because some of the mystery of it is walking through it together. Remember, every time I come here on a Wednesday, this is the first time I've ever said any of this stuff to anybody else. Yes, I may have read it, and reading it in my mind, I hear it, but now I'm actually expressing it to a point where other people can understand it. So if I can show you how I got to this understanding, not saying that I'm trying to tell you everything about the scripture, if I can show you how I got to this understanding, hopefully, as you read your scriptures, when you're reading and putting it together, it won't be things that you trip over like, man, what was it in Chronicles? No, you'd be like, no, let me just go over here and tell you about Jehoshaphat. All right. So in Jehoshaphat, right? Because we just seen that he took over. And Jehoshaphat, his son, I'm at Chronicles 17, 2 Chronicles 17:1. And Jehoshaphat and his son reigned in his place. Right? So now we're talking about that. And he strengthened himself against Israel. Wow. And placed his army in the walled cities of Judah. And he set watch posts in the land of Judah and the cities of Ephraim, and Asa his father has taken. And the Lord was with Jehoshaphat, for he walked in the former ways of his father David, and did not seek Baal. He didn't go after other gods. Now remember, he's in the land of Judah. No Baal, gone. Everything is gone. He's walking in the path of his father. But his father walked in the commands, not according to the deeds of Israel. So we do see that speaking towards Israel is the land that you don't want to walk in the deeds of. As we get a little further, and I'm trying to hold off on it because I want to have the whole picture versus giving you something and then you build on it, as opposed to once we see Jerusalem and Judah for who they are, I'm going to start bringing out some text from the prophet, and you just make notes to it because it's speaking to both cities, how they are, their reference. You might hear some of the text to say, she was better than you, or this was better than that, and they're referring to them as women or daughters, and we'll understand that going forward once we get into it. All right, and we'll see all the betrayal and everything else. So he didn't act like Israel. Now we see Ephraim in the picture. We're going to also see this Mount Seir. Now, I'm going to go back because I'm a little ahead. Who was in Mount Seir? Who left their father and said, Dad, I ain't got no time for what you got going on for me. I'm going to go up here and raise my people in the mountains of this Mount Seir. It was a son. It was a long time ago. It was two of them. The first one was born because the first one was born because that's the way it go. And the second one was born, and he was the one they took up to the mountain, and they was like, I'll sacrifice you. So brother that moved up into the mountain in the Syria. All right, man. I'll let that. Hey, Google is a wonderful thing. I'm not telling you. No free advice. Just know that now if they're going up into the mountains of Seir later on and they're going into the tribes of Ephraim, they're starting to branch out a little bit more into even other areas of what they're doing. Like, this is a family affair. Like, hey, cuz, what you doing over here? Huh? Huh? Ishmael. Ishmael moved into the mountains of Seir. He was like, yo, Dad, I'm out. I'm going to just go up here and live in the mountains. He took all the stuff and he came back. A lot of this stuff is talked about so sporadically throughout the text, you might forget it because they might just come back and be like, hey, yeah, everybody's up in the mountain of Seir, because they would have known that. They wouldn't have been familiar. If they would have said, hey, you're going up the mountain of Seir, they're like, oh, that's the Ishmaelites. Those are the people of Ishmael. Those are the ones up in that mountain, that region. Because the Jerusalem, and we're going to talk about, and I'm putting this in order, because Jerusalem, in one of the fights, what did the men in the battlefield say? That they were people of the hill, right? So these people would reside in these hills. If you go over to these countries, you'll see that they built their houses and stuff into walls. I'm pretty amazed at how they did it. Like, their houses and their living spaces is built into the mountain. So people would come to try and conquest. They couldn't get up that hill. It was too much for them. So the guys, okay, we'll get to that story later. Man, the Bible got so many good, like, we getting ready to roll into. All right. So Jehoshaphat, he was good in the eyes of the Lord. He didn't do what Israel said. So the Lord established his reign and ran in his hand, and all of Judah gave him presents. Jehoshaphat had great riches, and in his heart was exalted. Now, this is what we're going to hear about Jehoshaphat, right? Let me make sure I got the right one. Because, boy, they'll turn on you in a heartbeat. Just kidding. All right, so Jehoshaphat, because I'm running out of time here. Jehoshaphat was a king that, when we talk about what he did in relation to the kingdom, now we see that Asa, his father, did what? Tore down the houses. There's no houses, which means if all of these places where people went to worship, they're gone now. What are the people left with? They either go into their own homes, we hear in the scriptures, and they went into their own tent. When they say that in the scriptures, it meant everyone went into their own house and figured out how they wanted to worship. It wasn't a collective thing. Like, when we all leave here, we're not going to go home and worship a different God, right? But these people, after everything was being torn down, you have people who don't know because they didn't have anything. They can't go worship here. They can't go worship here. But now that we have the house of the Lord as the central focus, we need people to do what? I'm showing you the order of how these kings, the good ones, what they're doing when they go back to the people, the good kings. This time it went from putting tearing all the negative places around to, as Miss Alita said, now we need teachers. So he said, hey, I'm the king. My dad got rid of everything. I see the land has people that want to come worship him. It's time to educate them. How do I do that? Do I sit back? No, I got all the Levitical priests. I got the prophets here. I'm not going to hold you to my court. I'm going to send you out to the people to do what? What was the results of them going out to do this? They spread, but what happened? Turn it back. But the Bible says something very specific. It did what? It increased the fear of the Lord. The fear, wow, the fear of the Lord? So the whole point of him going back out there and teaching us was just to scare them? No, we know that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of what? Wisdom. And with all thy get what? So this man said, hey, these people need the wisdom, the fear of the Lord, because they would go in their house, and I want you to understand the fear of the Lord, and not fear the Lord. They would turn to whatever statue or idol they had in their homes. You get what I'm saying? When we hear fear the Lord, we think of a horrified, like, oh, boo. No, the fear of the Lord is this. I'm worshiping an idol that is worthless. But the one true God is watching me do that. I should be afraid that I'm doing such an abominable act. Not, you get what I'm saying? Because I am wrong. Now, I'm not, the fear of the Lord is the understanding that I should turn back to God and not worship these worthless things. So we see that he he instituted. I'm going to run through it real quick, and this is where we'll close it out at. Okay. And Judah gave him presents to Jehoshaphat, and he had great riches and glory, and his heart was exalted in the ways of the Lord. And he again removed high places and Asherim. Now, Andy, where did he remove these from? So he began to remove stuff. So did they come back in there? Again, this is the chroniclers who just said that all of them was removed. They're telling the story as they remember it orally. So he began, where was that? Where am I at? 6. And his heart was exalted, and he removed the high places and the Asherim from Judah. And in the 3rd year of his reign, his leader, Benaiah, Obadiah, Zechariah, Nathaniel, Micaiah, to teach to the cities of Judah. And he was very specific. He taught in Judah, and with them he sent the Levites, Shammai, names. We can run through all names. He sent out a team, and he also sent out priests. Trust me, I'd have ate up like 10 of my minutes going through all them names. Because y'all have been laughing at me saying, yeah. Because I would have got to Tobadaniah, and I would have like, there it is. So what it is, look, we see that he sent it out. And they taught in Judah. With them was the book of what? Man, so they didn't just go out and teach in Judah. We always hear people say, well, they didn't have it. They went out and taught the books of the law. All right, so historically, really quick, when they would go out and teach, they would take a book. When I say the book of the Torah, they wouldn't take the whole book. They would have took whatever book they had, and that's what they would have taught from. They would have instructed everybody on everything that was in there. So they took this law out, and they went around on all the cities of Judah and taught the people. Again, they are teaching the people to turn back to the Lord because the land was worshiping everything. This is why his heart was right with the Lord, because he was doing what Peter said later on in the temple. And Peter said later on in one of his books, he said that the desire of the Lord is what? What did Peter say the desire of the Lord was? Come on. They'll all come. No. Peter said that all come to what? That he said that was the desire of the Lord. So when we see this heart right here, we see that he's doing the desire of the Lord to turn those away from idols, false worship, back to the heart of God, because that is repentance. We see why his heart was right. We see why Asha's heart was right, because they were doing the desire of the Lord to get people to turn back to. Because guess what Jerusalem was in the very beginning when we started this part about Jerusalem and everything being built? What was Jerusalem's main reason supposed to be? To turn the whole entire world to what? So now we see, instead of it being a grand mission of just everybody coming to the temple, we see now we got to start sending out recruits. Consider like sending out disciples to go and preach the gospel, and they take the word with them. You know, a lot of similarities in my eyes, but that's just my eyes. They look like this on my face sometimes. But all right. And they taught in Judah, and they taught from the Torah, and they went around all the cities, and they taught the people. And in 10 it says, the fear of the Lord fell on the reins of the land, and they were around Judah and did not fight against Jehoshaphat. Everybody around them. Now we got peace. All right. And some of the Philistines, wait a minute. The Philistines brought presents to Jehoshaphat and loads of silver. And the Arabians brought him flocks, 7,700, and thousands and hundreds of male goat. And Jehoshaphat became increasingly great, and he built places and stored city, and he had much work in the city of Judah. And men of battle, mighty brave men, were in Jerusalem, because that's the capital. They're defending it now, right? And these were the numbers according to the fathers of the house of Judah, commanding thousands. All right, now he's talking about the reign of the army, right? Who was in reign of what? How many people did they command in these hosts? I was next to him. All right. And of Benjamin, right? I'm at 17, because we talk about Benjamin. We have some mighty men from there. So Benjamin is still siding with Judah. And next to him was Jehoiadaz and 180,000. And then we talk about at the very end of 19 in Chronicles, these was the ones serving beside those whom the king put in the walled cities all throughout Judah. Now, as we come back, if y'all want to read ahead in the Chronicles next week, you could pick right back up and keep reading, and you will continue to run with the northern kingdom with southern kingdom interference. Now, remember, I said pick a side, right? Nobody picked a side. Y'all left me out all by myself. So what I would like to do, if you choose to, not full participation, but hey, this side, if you can do me a huge favor, follow the north. This side, you can do me a huge favor, follow the south. You could go Chronicles or Kings. You remember those books we used to always love as a kid? If you like this guy, follow here. If you like that, follow here. When you see the kings change, if you feel as though you're now starting to get the hang of moving between the kings, hey, switch kingdoms if you can. If you come in here and you're on this side and you were on the south and just so happen you got a better understanding of the north, sit over here next time. I know it's a little out of order. I got you. You might be stuck in place. Just hold on your sign, put an S on it. But what I'm saying is, if you got familiar with one kingdom over the other, it'll give me an understanding. Yeah, this whole side of the room might be packed. I mean, we might need a little bit better understanding of the northern kingdom, and we got to talk about the southern kingdom so much.